Hello there, people of the internet. I want to talk about realistically how much ammunition is going to be enough for a United States civilian. If you are, say, I don't know, law enforcement or military, or doing something that revolves around using ammunition on a regular basis, then this video is not going to apply to you. But realistically, for the average US civilian, most people really aren't running and gunning like, say, you or I might be. Most people aren't going to the gun range 5 times a week and blowing through 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Most people aren't getting as proficient with firearms as I think me and a lot of other people in the community watching this video would be. But all of that being said, I think that I still have a pretty good foothold set in terms of what would be a good realistic amount. We do have to take certain things into consideration. We have to take into consideration the reality of the world that we live in, not necessarily what we want the world to be or what we expect people to do, because what we want people to be doing with their capabilities and their stockpiles and their training sessions and everything like that, that doesn't matter. What matters is what people actually do, and by a pretty huge margin, most people aren't going out to get firearms training. Now, in the world we live in, the biggest things that we have to worry about, for the most part, at the current time of speaking, is probably going to be like home invasions, or maybe somebody causing a mass unaliving. I gotta pick my terminology really careful because YouTube is very good at deciding that it doesn't like what I have to say. So there are some very real, very distinct possibilities of somebody coming up against an armed foe, most likely multiple assailants. Most likely you're going to find yourself at a situation where you're already at a disadvantage, because most of the time the attackers, they pick the time, they pick the place, they pick their method of attack, and they pick what it is that they're going to be using in that attack. And they oftentimes have the element of surprise. And a lot of these situations can be quite difficult. This is one of the main reasons why I definitely recommend you do not limit yourself on capacity or capabilities, because you have no idea what is going to be coming your way. And you have no idea what the condition of the people who are going to be causing trouble is going to be whenever they show up to cause that trouble. You don't know what they're going to be hyped up on. You don't know how willing they're going to be to put their life at risk to do whatever it is that they have decided to do. You don't even know if they are there for the sole purpose of getting themselves unalived. So there's certain things that you got to take into consideration, and the world that we live in right now is absolutely nuts. And realistically speaking, I would say the degradation of just the what's the word I would look for here? Not common sense, but common courtesy. The degradation of common courtesy to the point to where it seems like a vast majority of the people inside of our society don't give a damn about human life. It seems like the potential for things to go bad really, really suddenly and really, really quickly, even though you did nothing wrong, are getting higher and higher. So if this was, say, I don't know, 50 years ago, where things were not necessarily less stressful, but the idea of having to come up against some of the threats that we're currently facing nowadays, especially with like the mass unalivings. If this was 50 years ago, I'd probably be making a different video. But nowadays, if you are watching a video like this, odds are you are wanting to get yourself more prepared for what could potentially lie in the future. The thing is, we have no idea what's going to come in the future. We simply don't know. You could estimate, you could guess, you could do all sorts of stuff. You could fearmonger if that's your ploy, but realistically, we all have no idea. So, in order to set a good, solid baseline for the potentials of what might possibly come in the future, I think that there's some pretty good standings for the amount of ammunition that you're going to want. And as a general rule for most of the people in the United States, if you are going to be looking at a rifle for like practical defensive purposes, just to prepare yourself for what the future might possibly hold, you're probably going to be looking at an AR and 5.56. That's just the most common option here in the United States. It's the most logical one. They're relatively cheap for the amount of capabilities that you get. You can set them up to do literally whatever it is that you want. This is not a pro AR video. This is not me talking about how modular they are or what you can do with them. This is just me saying that's probably what most people are going to go with. So if you decide to go that route, or like any other very common route, like you go out and you get yourself an AK, or maybe you're a battle rifle guy and you go out and get yourself a G3 or something like that, this is pretty much still going to pertain to you. But realistically, I would say in terms of what it is that you would want to get, you got your magazine inside your rifle. Most of your rifles come already with at least one magazine. I would recommend going out and getting at least a few more. This is a bandolier, holds 4 magazines. If you want to get a chest rig or some sort of better setup, by all means, go ahead and do that. But this is one of those times where reality sets in, and not everybody can afford to go out and spend like $200+ on a good, proper setup for carrying around ammunition with like a chest carrier or plates or anything like that. And God, if you throw placing armor and whatnot into that, then you're probably going to start looking at some real money. But something like this, they're extraordinarily inexpensive. This carries 4 magazines. You literally just grab it, toss it over your shoulder, just like this. Now you got 4 magazines on person. If you want to carry more ammunition than that, go out and get yourself another one of these. But AR mags, they're extraordinarily inexpensive. AK mags, also very abundant and inexpensive. Same thing with like G3 mags and whatnot. Now, with these right here, get enough ammunition to keep them loaded. These right here are polymer mags, and people have told me that polymer mags do not do well whenever they stay loaded. So I wanted to test that. And I actually loaded these back in 2019. It was right before I lost my brother. So these right here have been loaded since 2019, and they still seem to function and be well, but it all really depends on the kind of polymer mag it is that you get. I went out and sourced several to test them. As a matter of fact, I'll make a full-on video about them. These are KCI mags. They've served me pretty well. No feed lip issues, no issues of any kind. These right here, though, these are unbranded, transparent magazines of some kind. No idea what they actually are, but I have had issues with the ammunition, like getting hung up and sticking in these over long periods of time with storage. So I guess do your research and figure out what magazines it is that you want. You can always cut out the middleman and just go with some kind of metal magazine to make sure that you don't have any issues whatsoever with long-term storage. So those all being filled, realistically, there are very, 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 very few situations that a U.S. citizen would come across where 4 magazines that are fully loaded plus your magazine inside of your rifle, very few situations where those could not handle whatever it is that you come across. Like, if you need more than 5 mags as a U.S. civilian, you are in a really, really bad spot. Like, really, really bad spot. That is not where you would find yourself. But on top of that, you always want at least a little bit of a stockpile of secondary ammunition, because you never know what the future is going to hold. So this is an ammo can. It's about the size of a 30 cal can, but it's an aftermarket can. It's like a kind of in-between sort of thing. And this right here is filled with loose 223 rounds, and you'll notice that this right here is just cheap steel case ammo. And a can that is about this size, I figure I got probably 800 rounds of steel case ammo in this, and this is just the cheapest bottom of the barrel stuff that I could get my hands on at the time whenever I bought this. And this is your training ammo. If you manage to take your rifle out often enough to burn through this ammo, and don't just mag dump into garbage, practice with your rifle. Practice the fundamentals of marksmanship, practice the manipulation of your rifle, practice drills, practice doing things with your rifle to see where the shortcomings of your particular gun are. And if you burn through a container of ammunition like this, then you already have significantly more training with your gun than most Americans do with any general firearm. So you're already on top of the game there. So we have the beginnings of what it is that realistically a person would need. You got your magazines, you got your rifle, all of those are loaded with a good quality ammunition that you would bet your life on. and then you got yourself either backup ammo or training ammo or something like that. You have your container of ammunition that you're going to burn. This is going to be your dirt cheap stuff. But on top of that, I would recommend getting yourself a second ammo storage container. Normally, I would recommend getting like a 50 cal ammo can, and that is what you're going to be storing your good quality ammunition in. That is the stuff that you're not going to be bringing to the range. I mean, make sure it runs through your gun and whatnot. But you're not going to be going to the range and burning 1,000 rounds of the decent stuff. That is where you're going to keep your just-in-case ammunition. And I recommend getting a surplus metal 50 caliber ammo can, one, because it's nice and large, but two, because metal doesn't flex the way that plastic does, and it seals itself extraordinarily well because it's got a rubber liner on it. These plastic ones also have a rubber liner on it, but every time I pick this up or move it around or anything like that, the plastic flexes and the rubber seal is broken. I don't really care because I'm burning through this ammo anyway with training, YouTube videos, just goofing off, doing the things that I do. So I would recommend a 50 caliber ammo can. If you have loose packed rounds like what I got right here, you could probably shove 1,200 rounds in that bad boy, give or take. And you got your training ammo, your just-in-case rounds. I mean, you could get away with 1,000 rounds of the good ammo that you're going to bet everything on. And then you got your magazine and bandolier and all the stuff holding everything. And realistically, as far as rifles go, like, there's very, 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 very little in the United States that right there could not handle. On top of that, you can carry this around, and that's probably the big point of contention. I see a lot of people say, I have 10,000 rounds of 5.56 or something like that, and I'm like, all right, well, what happens if you got to bug out? What happens if there's a natural disaster or a fire, tornado, hurricane, mother-in-law? I mean, things can happen that make you have to run away. And you got your rifle, you put a sling on it. This particular one does not have a sling on it because that is not my go-to rifle. Got your rifle, toss a sling on it, put this right here over your shoulder, so now you have your magazines in your bandolier. Or, I mean, a lot of these have like MOLLE on them to where if you do happen to have a chest rig or something like that, they strap right to it, so that's really, really convenient to have. And then you can take your arm strap, it comes right off, and use that as like a makeshift sling for your rifle. Not recommended, but it will work. After that, grab your training ammo and your primary ammo, canning each hand, and then start running, because who knows what's happening. I mean, hurricane, you could probably just bug in for that. Tornado, bug in for that. Mother-in-law, run for the hills, Jesus. All right, so all of that being said, like, just from civilian standpoint here in the United States, I think that right there would probably last most people for their entire lives, assuming that they're not going out and using their firearm like on a regular basis, like say you and I would. Now, handguns are a little bit different. You don't need a significant amount of ammunition or support for your handgun. You need training with your handgun. Like, for example, in the event that things go bad here in the United States to the point to where you need to bug out and leave or defend yourself on a regular basis to the point to where these ammo stockpiles would be a significant asset to you, then things have gone really, really bad. And you're probably just going to use a rifle versus a handgun. A handgun is for living in society, something that you can carry on your person and keep on your person at all times without having to worry about any of the issues that you might have to worry about with a rifle. You don't have to worry about things like, alright, I'll be honest, I had something interrupt me for this video, and I was expecting it to only take a few minutes. And now I'm back here, like 18 hours later, and I'm having some coffee, and I have absolutely zero idea where I left off with this video. I'm pretty sure that I was talking about handgun ammunition and the amounts that you need to stockpile. Realistically speaking, for defensive ammunition, you don't have to stockpile defensive ammo for a handgun. Get enough to fill your magazines, because that defensive ammo, yes, you want to make sure that your handgun works with it, but once you do that, you don't have to have 1,000 rounds of it sitting on standby. The likelihood of you reloading your magazines that you're using for defensive purposes through your handgun is extraordinarily small in comparison to doing it with a rifle. If things are so bad to the point to where you have to start reloading your magazines, odds are you're already resorting to your rifle platform. But your defensive handgun ammo, it's prohibitively expensive, and stockpiling a whole bunch of that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the likelihood of you using a handgun that much is extraordinarily low. Odds are you're going to use a handgun to the point to where you can get to a rifle. The only times where you'd use a handgun is if you have it on person and you don't have access to a rifle. But even then, once you get through your magazines that you have on you, unless you have your stockpile of handgun ammunition with you, you're not going to be reloading those magazines anyway. So get enough good, proper defensive handgun ammunition to load your magazines, and then after that, you can afford to get the cheaper, like, ball ammunition, like 115 grain, maybe 124 grain, just regular full metal jacket bullets. And that is the stuff that you're going to use to train. If you have your defensive handgun, in this particular case, I got this M9 clone. This is not my defensive handgun, but it's just what I have sitting here, so it's what I'll show. If you have your defensive handgun, and you have, say, 3 magazines that you keep in your whatever container it is that you keep your handgun in, and these magazines are filled with defensive ammo, then go out and get yourself another 3 magazines and fill them with ball ammo, and that is what you're going to be using to train yourself with. Now, in the event that things get really, really, really bad to the point to where you have to dip into your handgun reserves for whatever reason, if things get that bad, then you're absolutely using a rifle. But if things do get that bad to the point to where you absolutely have to dip into your handgun reserves, then I still wouldn't want to get hit with a full metal jacket round, and I doubt that anyone in the audience would. But stockpile, I don't know, I'd say about 1,000 rounds of full metal jacket rounds for your handgun, and that should give you some pretty gosh darn good adequate training with your handgun, along with a decent break-in period if you go out and buy your handgun new. You don't really have to stockpile a dramatic amount of defensive loads as long as you know your particular defensive load actually runs through your handgun, because the likelihood of you dipping back into that stockpile of defensive loads for your handgun in a bad situation is exceptionally small. So there we go. I think that's everything that I wanted to cover, but like I said, I got no idea where I left off, so I'm hoping that I covered everything. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. In the description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode.
Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.